After more classified documents were found at the homes of President Biden and former Vice President Mike Pence, Donald Trump's supporters in the GOP and on Fox News claimed Trump had been vindicated while also spreading wild conspiracy theories about the news. But if anything, the cases of Biden and Pence make Trump's potentially criminal behavior look a lot worse. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. Trump supporters in the GOP and on Fox News have been twisting themselves in knots over the revelations about classified documents found at the homes of Trump, Biden, and Pence. For example, when the news first broke that the FBI had searched Mar-a-Lago last year and discovered top-secret documents that Trump had lied about having and refused to give back, you might recall that many Republicans dismissed it as a non-scandal. They threw out every excuse they could think of. It was a storage issue. The FBI was just fishing. They planted evidence. Or even that Trump was just a little sloppy because he didn't have time to pack.
This is really at its core a storage argument. I don't think a fight over storage of documents is worthy of what they've done.
This was a fishing expedition. It was an old-fashioned fishing expedition. I actually think it had little to nothing to do with classified documents.
No one trusts the FBI or the DOJ anymore. I don't trust them any further than I can throw that entire building. If they told me that they found something, I wouldn't know that they actually found it there, or if they just said they found it there.
Who is to say in this kind of case that some of the documents supposedly seized were not planted there to begin with?
Do I know that the boxes of material they took from Mar-a-Lago, that they won't put things in those boxes to entrap him? How do we know that they're going to be honest with us about what's actually in the boxes?
When the president moves out of the White House, you have effectively, 6 hours to move out of the White House. It's effectively inauguration time where one president gets moved out and one president gets moved in.
No, you don't have 6 hours. You have 2 months. But unfortunately, your dad spent those 2 months bitching and moaning and planning a coup to stay in power, and then when it didn't work out and the moving van showed up, he just screamed, "Oh, grab everything and run." Your dad was the first president to leave office like a looter at Best Buy during a blackout. You guys are acting like the inauguration is a surprise party where they keep the date secret until the last minute. I don't remember Joe Biden walking into the Capitol, flicking the lights on and seeing thousands of people assembled. Whoa! What the hell is this? Although it is very hard to surprise Joe Biden. He is always on alert. That's why he tiptoes into every room like someone about to pop out from behind a couch, and he freezes every time he hears a noise. You hear, Aunt Kathy? I can hear you breathing. Then there was also the ridiculous excuse that Trump is just a nostalgic guy who loves to save little mementos and keepsakes.
My father-in-law, as anybody knows who's been around him a lot, loves to save things like newspaper clippings, magazine clippings, photographs.
My father always kept clippings, press clippings. He would have, newspaper articles, pictures, notes from us.
He saves every note I've ever given him. In fact, he has a special storage bin where he puts them. He showed it to me. Actually, I think I know where Trump puts notes from his weird adult sons. I'm not going to say where, but it would explain why he's always talking about this.
People are flushing toilets 10 times, 15 times, as opposed to once.
You got to flush 15 times, otherwise you'll never get rid of that big stack of Father Day cards. So those were all the excuses Trump supporters offered when Trump got caught with hundreds of classified documents that he lied about and refused for over a year to turn over despite multiple requests and a subpoena. But then, when Biden found and voluntarily turned over a much smaller cache of documents from his time as a senator and vice president, Republicans suddenly changed their tune and claimed it was a national security emergency because, unlike Trump, Biden supposedly did not have the power to declassify documents.
The president has the authority to declassify documents. Now, the question is whether or not the president actually declassified the documents. The vice president does not have the authority to declassify.
President Trump, as president, has the right to declassify documents. So the media should cover the fact that the FBI has been weaponized against President Trump and clearly has covered up for sitting President Joe Biden.
Let's be very clear. Like we said from the beginning, a former vice president or anybody else has no ability to remove classified documents. Former presidents are different.
Joe Biden conceivably stole those documents. What people need to understand is the President of the United States is the only one that can declassify documents, not the Vice President. For Joe Biden to steal documents and have possession of them, this is a serious investigation.
This is very serious, and that is why I'm calling on QAnon and the Jewish space laser to step in and investigate, and it should be easy to track everyone's movements using the microchip Bill Gates planted in the COVID vaccine. Which I appreciate he did now. First of all, that's flat out wrong. Biden did have the power to declassify the documents as vice president. That doesn't mean he should have had them in his home. He shouldn't have. Although, again, as we stated before, it's not exactly surprising to me that Joe Biden didn't take document security seriously during his time as Obama's vice president. I mean, look at him. That is definitely the face of a dude who might take documents and who definitely has a bunch of towels at home with hotel names on them. So Trump supporters had to pivot when the documents were found at Biden's home. Then they got thrown for yet another loop when classified documents were also found at the home of former Vice President Mike Pence. Some Republicans responded to the news by just throwing their hands up and saying, screw it, like Lindsey Graham, who, instead of making a political point, decided to just make a joke.
You got Trump, you got Pence, you got Biden. The only thing I think you'll find at my house is a bunch of Chick-fil-A bags on the floor.
Okay, but in fairness, there's a good chance those were stolen from the Trump White House, too. It would not surprise me if Trump wrote classified on every fast food box that came through there. Other Trump supporters, however, tried to thread the needle by claiming Trump and Pence were innocent, but Biden was somehow guilty, like Ted Cruz, who called the FBI search of Mar-a-Lago a fishing expedition. Cruz demanded more FBI searches of Biden and his family, while also dismissing the Pence news as no big deal.
I believe the FBI needs to search the residences of Hunter Biden and any business offices of Hunter Biden to determine if there are classified materials there.
Just as an addendum to this, the news came out today, I'm sure you saw it, that former Vice President Mike Pence, a friend of both of ours, he's found some classified documents, I think at his home in Indiana, not in his office. What do you make of that?
Oh, look, the Mike Pence story, it's still early. Mike Pence, and as you noted, he is a good friend. He's a good man. He's explained where these came from. That was a mistake, but there's no reason to think it was anything but inadvertent.
Within a matter of seconds, he went from saying the FBI should search the president's son, who has no connection to any of this, to brushing off the Pence news as inadvertent. Why aren't you calling on the FBI to search Mike Pence's other properties, like his office or that happy place in his head he goes to when he's in a meeting with Donald Trump? Other Fox hosts tried other excuses, like claiming Pence's mistake was understandable because he didn't have much time to leave the White House.
Biden says he was in a rush to pack up his stuff after his vice presidency. Wait a second. I think Mike Pence was in a little bit more of a rush. Remember that transition? And Biden knew he was leaving the White House. It had been 8 years. You're not allowed to stay any longer. Pence was looking around saying, wait, is Trump going to pull this off?
Wait, you think Mike Pence, known for, among other things, the January 6th rioters chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," didn't pack because he was waiting to see if the coup would succeed? If I spend all day packing boxes and writing on them with a Sharpie and then I get killed, I'm gonna feel so stupid. And we know Pence wasn't in a rush to pack because we've seen what he looks like when he's in a rush. He claps when he runs. If Pence had been rushing to pack up his office on the last day, you would have heard this sound coming from the White House. Mike, are you clapping? I want to. And then after they made excuses, they moved on to baseless speculation. For example, Fox host Laura Ingraham wanted to know why the FBI hadn't searched President Obama's home and office yet.
On the issue of Obama, it is curious why the DOJ hasn't requested access to his many offices across the country, given the fact that a majority of Biden's documents came from his administration.
I have no idea whether any classified documents will show up at his house, but if there's one person I'm willing to bet did things the right way, it was Obama. Plus, let's not forget, he left office and his life immediately got way better. He's not moping around a country club stealing the mic at weddings to bitch about witch hunts. He's hanging with celebrities, kite surfing, and having the top button from all his shirts removed. When he left the White House, they probably say, "Do you want any of these documents?" And he said, You can keep it. By the way, we tape this show way before it's on TV. So if they find documents at Obama's house between now and airtime, they were planted by James Corden to make me look bad. The only other politician who I can possibly imagine would have no interest in taking classified documents would be Bernie Sanders. I don't want your documents for too long. The top 1% of politicians has had 99% of the documents. We need to redistribute the documents. Everyone can have a fair share of the documents. Other Trump allies reached for distractions like Sean Hannity, who brushed off the Pence news and turned his attention to someone else, and you will never guess who.
I think Mike Pence was watching everything with the Biden, top secret documents, et cetera, et cetera. He initiated his own investigation just to double check. He immediately called the FBI when they found a couple of documents, Matt Gaetz, and handed them over and worked with the officials. But that's not the issue to me. The issue is, how was Hillary Clinton treated?
Oh my God, dude, let it go. She already had her presidential campaign destroyed by a never-ending saga over classified emails, and now she's got to sit around and watch as basically every other living president or vice president opens up a cereal box labeled at home, "Oops, all classified." Just get a new thing. Find literally anything else to obsess over. Go back to whining about how M&Ms are too woke now or something. Although, if you ask me, Mars missed a huge opportunity. They shouldn't have canceled the candy mascots. They should have just jumped on the news and introduced a new gray M&M who steals classified documents. Probably the craziest reaction to the Pence news has come from Fox host Tucker Carlson, who concocted an elaborate fantasy where the DOJ asked Pence to look for the documents, assuming he had none, in order to make Trump look bad by comparison, so that they could then prosecute Trump.
It wasn't so long ago that Pence was on television saying he was sure he had no classified documents in his possession. He said that a few times. Then just days ago, Mike Pence sent his personal attorney to search his family's home in Carmel, Indiana for classified documents. Now, if Mike Pence didn't think he had classified documents, why would he send his lawyer to go look for classified documents? We can't say for certain, but it's entirely possible, in fact, it's likely, that Mike Pence was asked to do this by federal prosecutors who are trying to build a case against his old boss, Donald Trump. Now, the point would be to show that not every federal official walks off with state secrets. Donald Trump was uniquely evil in that regard, as in so many others. See, Mike Pence didn't do it. So if that was the plan, and we suspect that it was, it backfired spectacularly.
And if that was the plan, what else were they planning? It's possible. In fact, it's likely they were planning on asking Mike Pence to go undercover as Donald Trump. And if that was the plan, how would they do it? Would they have arrested Donald Trump so they could perform an experimental surgery wherein they remove Donald Trump's face and swap it with Mike Pence, just like they did to John Travolta and Nicolas Cage? And if that was the plan, then what else were they planning? Would the real Donald Trump, now wearing Mike Pence's face, have escaped, forced to live his life as Mike Pence? And would the real Mike Pence, now disguised as Donald Trump, have to chase him down and prove his true identity? And if that was the plan, and we suspect it was, it backfired spectacularly because they forgot one thing. Mike Pence can catch Donald Trump because Mike Pence runs like this. In reality, the Biden and Pence revelation showed this is a lot more commonplace than most of us realized, and that if Trump had just given the documents back when asked, there wouldn't have been a problem. Instead, he lied and obstructed for over a year. That's what makes this case different. That and the fact that he probably had top secret documents stuffed inside
Chick-fil-A bags on the floor.
This has been A Closer Look.